Alright guys, VR666T here again. I got another little short video for you. This won't take very long. I'm going to go over some of the types of surplus 8mm you'll run across in your gun show, gun broker perusing. Sometimes online it's available. 8mm surplus is pretty much dried up nowadays. I mean, the writing's on the wall. You might get a case every now and then, but you know, you're going to be paying a lot for it. I mean, so if you didn't buy it up a couple of years ago, I invested in a substantial amount of 8mm surplus because I primarily collect 8mm rifles. So I was lucky enough to get several thousand rounds. I got many different varieties, and I would like to go over those varieties with you. But first off, I got a word of caution. There's a couple things you need to know about surplus 8mm, and some of these bullets can be quite dangerous to you or to what you're shooting at, and I want to point those out. If you ever messed with German surplus, most people say that steel case German surplus is garbage, don't use it, buy it for reloading components or use the powder, but they don't really recommend you shoot it. I kind of talked about this a little bit in my other in the Hakeem video about surplus ammunition, and there are two that I'm aware of that you really need to be careful with. Anything armor piercing is probably not such a good thing to be shooting unless you're at a range that allows you to shoot steel core stuff and or tungsten penetrator. There's also some other stuff floating around that is extremely dangerous, and I'm going to go over that. So right off the bat, we got these two cartridges here. Here are the Headstamps. We get the focus on there for you. As you can see, the one on the right has a red ring on the primer, and the one on the left has a totally green case head with a green ring on the primer. On German ammunition, the color of the primer ring, or the sealer they use, dictates what kind of projectile it has. So, if we look at the one on the right, it is a steel cased 198 grain bullet, lacquered steel cased. If we look at the date, this is a 1940, and you can see that right there. Okay, lot number 104, P25 manufacturer, and then it has usually some letters. I'm not really sure what the letters mean. I probably should have researched that before I made the video, but I'm sure you can figure it out on the internet. Main thing you need to look at is the date. You need to know the date. These two digits right there dictate date. German steel-cased ammunition was lacquered both in and out of the case before it was put together, up until about 1943 with most manufacturers. Okay? So if it's lacquered in and out, it's probably a good case, so you don't really have to worry about rust. But so this bullet right here should be good to go. You know, it's 1940 dated. You know, it should be lead core bullet. They didn't start using steel yet. It is you could fire this bullet. This is actually an SMK round, SMK, and that stands for armor piercing, steel core. So this is a penetrator round. So this is actually a pretty heavy bullet. It's heavier than the standard round, and it's got a penetrator hardened steel core in it, and that's why it has a red ring. Anything with a red ring means armor piercing, AP round. So if you're out there plinking at some steel stuff, some plates, just be mindful that anything with a red primer will probably put a hole in it. So, you know, this is meant to penetrate 3/8 plate at 100 yards. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you're a German Mauser fan, you might like this round. It's not very common at all. It's your pretty standard 1942 dated round. It's got a green primer, so it has a lead core bullet still, but if you notice, the entire head is green. This round is a 50% overpressure round. This is a proof cartridge. When the Germans would be finished with the heat treating process on the action of the K98, before they would get the firing proof acceptance stamps on the receiver, barrel, and bolt handle, it would have to fire one of these and survive. Okay? Do not stick this in your gun and fire it. It's not cool. It's not, oh, let's see what kind of damage it does. This round has the potential to kill you. And I mean that, and I mean it. Do not ever fire this round in your gun. You're talking about, you know, some of these rifles are 100 years old that can fire this cartridge. You don't know if it's ever been in a fire or what that gun's been through, how many times it's been refurbed, or even if, you know, the poor bastard that was building the rifle late in 1944 really gave a shit about the Rockwell hardness of the metal he was heat treating. Don't fire this round. Very dangerous round to have in your gun. Yet again, inspect every cartridge before you fire it. This is one of the reasons why. If you ever stumble across one of these, that's what it is. So be very careful with it. I would only just collect it. I wouldn't actually use it. I would never fire this round. If you were to put this in an Akeem, it would blow up in your face because of the pressure that this cartridge develops. It's way beyond the limitations of a semi-automatic firearm, and in a bolt gun, hypothetically, it should be good because it had to fire one of these to get proofed, but you know, that wasn't the idea of these cartridges. So keep that in mind. Be careful with those. Moving along, I'm going to go right into the 3 most popular surplus offerings on the market in recent history anyway for 8mm. Probably the most prevalent and cheapest used to be your Turkish ammo. Get it to focus there. There it is. This stuff is 1943 dated. It's 146 grain non-bolt tail projectile. It's pretty hot stuff. This will make your shoulder sore, most definitely, after firing a couple rounds of it. It's good though. It's surefire. No hang fires, even with stuff from the 30s that I've fired. In the late 40s, if it has a copper jacket, it may or may not have a steel core. So the way to check that's with a magnet. All the Cupronickel jacketed stuff is lead core. Good stuff. Don't put it in a Akeem. It's not really safe because these rounds are loaded hot. You know, they're cooking 2,900 feet per second. So not really a smart thing to put in the Akeem, but I mean, you probably could if you could dial your gas setting down enough, but I wouldn't do it. Just save this for your Mausers. Moving along, you have your, let's get the head stamp there. You have your 70s Romanian surplus. Now this has a red, like a purplish red sealer. That does not mean it's a penetrator round, that's just a color sealer they used. All this stuff was loaded with lead cored bullets. There's no steel core in these. Oh no, these are steel core, that's right. These are all steel core, so I guess the red would be. But it's not a penetrator round, that's what I'm getting at. So it's like a purplish red sealer they use. It's good stuff, it's surefire. When I used it, I shot a bunch of it and it wasn't very accurate. It's very filthy and the powder smells terrible. So I don't know what kind of powder they used. I used to be able to get 400 round tins of this stuff for $80 when I first started looking at it, but it's pretty much gone now. You can still find it. It works okay. I wouldn't fire it in the semi-auto because it's just nasty, filthy stuff. The powder does not burn clean. It leaves like a stinky, gritty residue behind. So it's not really conducive to a semi-automatic firearm, and it's, you know, complicated gas system most of the time. So that's what the cartridge looks like. It's most of it's 70s dated, but it is surefire. And I mean, if you're just looking for cheap stuff to plink in a bolt gun, you know, pick this stuff up. It's not bad. And then my 2 favorites. Yugoslavian ammo is the shit, and I know Yugoslavian ammo has a bad reputation, but they took some steps to ensure good function. Powder burns clean. This is 53 dated stuff, made at factory 12 by Partisan. You ever heard of Partisan ammunition? PPU and NY, depending if you're Serbian or not. Pretty Partisan Ammunition makes some good stuff. They made some good stuff in the 50s too. All the 50s stuff is good. I've even seen some back in the 40s that was decent. Excuse me, this is a 53. I've seen it up into the 57 with the purple primer, year that is. I know they made it, a lot of it, but you know, it all depended on what country we bought it from and imported it from. As you can see, they annealed the case neck, so it should expand and seal well. And it's a good thing they did that. Every now and then you'll get a cracked, like one out of every 100 rounds, you might get a cracked neck. I had one case split, but it sealed up fine in my Mauser, and it didn't blow gas back in my face. It only split up to about right there from the neck down. You do have to watch out for 54 dated factory 11 stuff. I have heard of a few people had case head separations, so I choose not to get 54 dated stuff. But like I said, most of it's gone, so it's all what you can get your hands on. But just keep that in mind, that there are some reported case head separations with 11 factory 11 54 dated stuff. All the 53 stuff from 11 and 12 is good, from what I know. 198 grain bullet, lead core, pretty standard. It's pretty accurate. It's not bad. It's machine gun ammo though, so you know, accuracy isn't the greatest. You know, it has kind of a crude crimp there. There's no cannula on the bullet either. So, or no, there is a cannula on this. There is a cannula on the bullet, but it's got a pretty crappy crimp. So, some of them might be loose, some of them won't be. Going back to the Turk, that's the one thing I forgot to say about Turk ammo. You'll always get case head or case neck cracks with these. Like almost every other round will split the neck. Just the brass they use is very brittle. Same thing with this stuff. It's just getting old, so brass gets a little brittle. You might get a couple cracks, but really it's far and few between. They do have very stiff primers on this ammo because it's machine gun ammo, so they didn't want slam fire. So they made the primers like incredibly stiff. So if you have an old firing pin in your Mauser, you might have a couple light strikes. You might take another strike to make it go off. The ammo's not shit. Just get a good firing pin spring. Wolf Ammunition sells upgraded firing pin springs for Mauser rifles. I've never had a problem with the Hakim with the standard stock firing pin springs. Never had a problem with it lighting stuff off. So mainly in K98 type rifles is when you might get a weak firing pin strike. But this is the 50s Yugo. It's good stuff. If you can get your hands on it, this is also really good stuff. This is 78 dated, Privy Partisan. It's got the hot pink primer, or well, it's like a red primer actually. It's like a blood red primer. This is corrosive, but it's the same thing as the 50s Yugo. It's just much better quality control. You can tell from the annealing of the case neck that the heat they used was much better controlled. Because on the 50 stuff, if you look at it, I mean, this is a good round. I just picked one up. But you can see the blackening at the neck. That's from overheating the brass. So, you know, I've seen the rounds where the annealing goes all the way back down here. Those are the rounds you tend to have problems with the cracked neck. So, but in the 70s, they pretty much got it down pat. This is pretty much the same thing that you can buy today. This is M49 ball. It's the same stuff they sell today. Any FMJ stuff you buy from Privy Partisan is this round, just not, it's not corrosive though. So really good stuff. I bought a case of this and I'm very happy with it. It's very accurate, very consistent ammunition, and I don't know what country mine came from, but it was stored very well, so the boxes were in good shape. So that's some good stuff there. Moving along. We'll jump back into German steel case stuff. Alright, here you go. Here's some lead core, 1940 dated. This is the same manufacturer as this is the same manufacturer in the same year as that SMK round I just showed you. So I don't know what country all this stuff came out of, but it was all 40 dated stuff. I got it from SGA Ammo. They had like a grab bag of 300 rounds for 60 bucks. I figured I'd give it a shot. I picked out all the blue primered ones, which I'm going to go over here in a sec, and threw those in the trash because they're pretty much worthless and they're not really collector's items. Nobody wants that. But you know, you can hear the powder in there. It's good stuff to shoot. Even on the ones, I have seen a little bit of rust, like tiny little bit. So I've already decided that this ammo needs to go first. So I plink with this with my 8 mils, but I haven't had any problems with it. And I did my thorough inspection of a large group of the rounds that I bought to see if any of this stuff was even any good. And most of it was. Anything with a blue primer is shit. So especially late war. So any of the early war stuff was actually made very well. So there you go. You also might run across rounds that look like this. This has a green primer ring. It's kind of faint, but it's there. This one was made by DOU. If I can get that to show up. Yeah, DOU right there. 1941. DOU also made rifles. This has a Cupronickel bullet. Oh, isn't that shiny and pretty? Yeah, look at it twinkle in the camera. Nice looking round. Still got shaky powder in it, so I don't fire it. I just kept it because you don't really see a lot of them with Cupronickel bullets, so you know, I'm gonna hang on to that one and not fire it. But anyway, that pretty much covers that. If you hold on a sec, I'll go get a blue primered one to show you. So I grabbed some steel core stuff so you guys can look at it. Get the camera to focus. As you can see, it's got some blue paint on the primer. This stuff is 44 dated. BNE is the manufacturer. So it has steel core, and you can already see the evidence going on here of internal case deterioration. In particular, if you look at the case mouth, you can already see the corrosion coming out of the case. You shake it, you can't hear anything. So this cartridge is far gone. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. That's the kind of stuff you want to steer clear. You know, this is when the Germans were just trying to pump rounds out. They weren't really concerned about quality or anything of that nature. I got 3 others just to show you like a good glimpse of what you might be looking at. As you can see, the quality and craftsmanship is pretty much deteriorated. So we got 2 44 dated ones and a 45 dated one. I pulled apart these 45 dated ones and they are just salty as a car and north of the salt belt. So that's the stuff you don't want. They all pretty much have evidence of case deterioration. So if you stick to good quality green primered stuff that you can get in the original boxes, you should be good. Next up, brass cased German. This is 39 dated. I have shot some 39 dated stuff. 40 was the first year they went to steel cased. It's good. Fire's good. It's accurate. Powder is in good shape. The problem is when you start going back in the 30s with brass cased German stuff, the primers start to go south. So, but that could also be from poor storage. I shot some 35 dated German brass cased, and it was all hang fires. So, but that's the only really surplus ammo I've run into where I got hang fires. But it's good other than that. And we got, get it to focus. Now this stuff is made by Partisan, a Privy Partisan subsidiary in Czechoslovakia, and this is a contract round. What you mean by contract round is this was made for either Egypt or Israel, and a lot of people just mistakenly think it's Israeli surplus because it has a Star David on it, but this really could have been for Israel and or Egypt. There's not a lot of it around. You're probably not going to find it. If you do though, it does fire good. I got like 20 rounds of it from a buddy, and I fired a couple rounds of it just to see if it worked, and it does. So if you do run across it, it's in good shape. This is 55 dated stuff. Fires fine, and you know, I didn't have any problems with it. The nice thing about it is it does have a the bullet has the knurling on it, and so it has a good bullet seat, so it's able to vent any corrosion or anything that's going on inside. So good bullet design. Really nice, good crimp, so should give good accuracy. After that, we have Belgian 8mm. This is 49 dated. As you see, it's pretty quality. Probably not going to run a lot, run across this stuff, but if you do, this one has a lead core. I checked it with a magnet because I don't see any sealer on the primer. You can barely see some green there, I think. But FN is Belgium, you know, Fabrique Nationale. They make the famed FN 49 rifle. So same guys made that. And here we have Egyptian surplus. It has like a purplish sealer on the primer. I know it's hard to, it's not really showing up there, right? Well, no, you can see it right there. The letters dictate the year, and then that dictates the manufacturer. I don't know how to read Egyptian, so but you can do some research online and figure out where it came from. A lot of people say this stuff's junk. I kind of don't believe them. I bought 300 rounds of this stuff for like 2 cents a round at a gun show, and just you know, just because I was like, whatever, we'll try it out. And it was dirty. It looked like it had been stored in a sandbox for 20 years. It was all tarnished and everything. I cleaned this one up because this is the one I kept. You know, I wanted to keep one as part of the collection. And I'll tell you what though, you know, all of it was surefire, all of it burned clean and consistent, and it fired like a dream in the Hakim. And I shot some in bolt guns that didn't have any sealing problems. It's quality made stuff, you know. You know, the Egyptians, you know, they cared about quality. You know, they went to the Swedes for guns and for the Hakim, and they went to you know, this is basically the Egyptian copy of an M49 ball round from Privy Partisan. So they either had Privy Partisan make this for them and put that head stamp on it, or which I don't think is the case because it has the tri-crimp on the primer. It's got the little dimple crimps on it, which the 53 dated stuff, the 50s Yugo has that. So it makes me inclined to think that they just basically copied, either they had them manufactured for them to their specifications, or they copied what the Yugoslavians were doing. So anyway, Egyptian surplus, I've had good success with it. Your mileage may be different, but it went pretty good for me. Last one I got for you is another German steel cased round, or excuse me, German brass cased round, and it's still 39 dated, same manufacturer, but as you can also, I wanted to point out that it has the tri-crimp. So, you know, a lot of people copied what the Germans did in terms of bullet weight, bullet shape, case design, primer design. So you can see that now with looking at all these other surplus rounds that we've gone through. You can see that they all pretty much tried to copy the Germans. One thing they didn't copy though, like especially the Yugoslavians, they didn't put such a sharp shoulder on the brass, and I think that plays a lot into why they crack, because they expand into the varying chambers of different rifles. And you know, if you have a good solid formed neck, it'll expand properly in the chamber and seal correctly. And you know, the only downside to the Yugo ammo is that it doesn't have such a nice defined shoulder, as you can see. It's there, but it's just not the same. And the way they circumvented that was by annealing the case neck to allow that expansion. But you know, that's what them butted up. As you can see, the we can line them up there. Bullet seating depth might be slightly different. Looks like it protrudes more on the Yugo, and that would yield you better accuracy because you engage the rifling with the round without exceeding the overall case length. But I like 50s Yugo. I think if you were gonna honestly shoot an 8mm surplus rifle from left to right, or excuse me, from left to right, you would want the Turk. Is good stuff for a bolt action gun. Keep it out of a semi-auto. The Romanian, it's good. It's dirty though. Filthy, nasty smelling powder. But other than that, it's not bad. So if you don't mind a thorough cleaning of your gun, if you can get a hold of it, it's surefire stuff. I mean, this was the stuff the Russians had built for the Russian captured guns. So, this is what they plan to use in case of World War III. So it was enough to get the job done, but it's good stuff. I haven't heard of anybody having any problems with these. And I have pulled one apart and they are lacquered in and out. So case rusting shouldn't be an issue with this as long as it's stored properly. And then your Yugoslavian offerings. The 50s Yugo on the top, 70s Yugo on the bottom. I mean, you can honestly see the difference in quality and manufacturing that 20 years makes, where they really started to pay attention to making the case formed right. And the quality of brass looks to be a lot cleaner. But obviously the 70s stuff is better. Now, on top of that, there is some stuff that's steel case from the 80s that I've seen on the surplus market. That's the same exact round as this, only it's steel cased. And I've also heard really good things about that. I'd imagine it's newer ammo. I don't think it would be bad stuff to shoot. But anyway, if you guys have any questions on any of these rounds, where they came from, the bullet weights, I can try to track it down. These are just rounds that I had in my private cartridge collection. That's one of the other things I like to do on the side, is collect cartridges. So anyway, like I said, if you got any questions, comment. You can message me, that's fine, and I'll do the best I can to answer those questions. So anyway, that's what we looked at. So you can see I have quite a bit of offerings and surplus 8mm. There's more out there. You got Portuguese, you got Ecuadorian. I have heard that the Ecuadorian stuff has hang fires. The Portuguese stuff is what I hear the best to get ever. I hear that stuff is amazing, and that you really can't go wrong with buying it. If you're just looking for plinking ammo, I would say the Romanian would be a good choice, and the German steel case, if you can find it, is a good choice also. But just keep in mind that this German stuff isn't really worth anything. I mean, people sell it on Gunbroker for a lot of money per box, and it's not shootable, and there's so much of it out there. The people who import this stuff didn't take any of the steel case stuff because they were worried about internal case corrosion. So a lot of it's still sitting in those countries. So, eventually they're going to start bringing it in at a very cheap price, and they're going to try to sell it to you for a lot. And like I said, I bought 300 rounds and 200 rounds were shootable based solely on looking at the primers. If they were green primers, I said they were in the we'll see if it's good. If they were blue primer, I immediately put them in my collection and just said that I'm not even going to try to shoot them because I already knew a little bit about it. And then I separated all the ammunition, all the German steel case I got by manufacturer and by year, and then I took one round out of each lot and year and pulled the bullet and inspected the inside the case, and except for one contractor, all but one were good. There was no rust inside. There was one head stamp, and it's the let's see if I can find it now. That head stamp, let me get it to focus. Come on. That head stamp with a lot number of 67. This is lot 25. Lot 25 was clean, no rust. Lot 67 had rust at the neck, a tiny bit. just surface rust, but it was there. So I'll warn you about that. But everything else was good. So the VLLA1 head stamp lot 67 did show signs of rust. But yet again, that has a lot to do with how it was stored. Now mind you, it was still 1940 dated. So this is early 40, and then 67 would have been late 40 manufacture. I wouldn't really go past 42 with steel cased ammo, because they were already feeling the pressure of the war, and they already would have started, you know, throttling back on their quality control measures. So anyway, if you got any questions, let me know. I'll do the best I can to answer them. This is, you know, this is my hobby. I'm not an expert. If I was wrong on anything, I tried to do as much research as I could, but if I wasn't correct on something, please feel free to correct me so I can add a note in the video to make sure that everyone's getting accurate information. And all right, have a nice day.